Nobody at the elite school would talk to the billionaire's deaf son, until one day a poor girl walked up to him and started signing fluently, leaving everyone speechless. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Marcus Thompson stood at the edge of the playground, his heart heavy, as he watched his 8-year-old son Tyler sitting alone on a bench, methodically arranging his toy cars in perfect lines. The other children ran past him, their laughter echoing across the schoolyard, but Tyler remained in his own quiet world, a world Marcus had desperately tried to protect, yet couldn't seem to bridge. "Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Henderson, Tyler's teacher, approached with that familiar look of concern. "I wanted to speak with you about Tyler's social development. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant with his academics, but he's different," Marcus finished, his jaw tightening. He'd heard this conversation 1,000 times. Ever since his wife Claire passed away 3 years ago, leaving them both to navigate Tyler's deafness together, Marcus had become fiercely protective. He'd hired the best tutors, enrolled Tyler in the most prestigious private school in Boston, and ensured his son had every advantage money could buy, everything except what he needed most, a friend. "The children don't know how to communicate with him," Mrs. Henderson continued gently. "We've tried to teach them basic sign language, but—" "I understand," Marcus cut her off, watching Tyler trace letters in the sand with his finger. The boy was spelling words, always thinking, always alone. That afternoon, Marcus knelt beside his son as they walked to the car. Tyler's bright green eyes, so much like his mother's, looked up at him expectantly. "How was school today, buddy?" Marcus signed, his movements still somewhat clumsy despite years of practice. Tyler's small hands moved gracefully through the air. "Same. Nobody talks to me." "It's okay, Daddy. I have my books." Marcus felt his chest tighten. At 32, he controlled a billion-dollar tech empire, commanded boardrooms full of executives, and could negotiate any deal. But he couldn't give his son the one thing that mattered most: connection. "Tomorrow will be better," he promised, though the words felt hollow. As they drove home through Boston's tree-lined streets, Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. Tyler was drawing in his notebook, lost in his imagination. The silence in the car wasn't comfortable. It was lonely, echoing the gap Marcus couldn't seem to close no matter how hard he tried. That night, after Tyler fell asleep, Marcus stood in his son's doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of the small chest. Photos of Claire smiled down from the shelves. Claire, who had learned sign language fluently, who had made Tyler laugh until his silent giggles shook his whole body. "I don't know how to do this without you, Claire," he whispered into the darkness. The next morning brought unexpected changes. Mrs. Henderson met them at the school entrance with an unusual brightness in her eyes. "Marcus, I have some interesting news. We're getting a new student today, a transfer from the public school system. She's Tyler's age." Marcus barely registered the information as he walked Tyler to his classroom. Another student meant another child who wouldn't understand, another potential disappointment for his son. But as they reached the classroom door, something extraordinary happened. A small girl with golden blonde hair was sitting at Tyler's usual desk, her tiny hands moving through the air in fluid, perfect sign language. She was practicing conversations with herself, her face animated and bright. Tyler stopped dead in his tracks, his green eyes wide with shock and something Marcus hadn't seen in years: hope. The blonde girl looked up from her practice session and noticed Tyler standing frozen in the doorway. Without hesitation, her small hands moved gracefully through the air. "Hi there, I'm Emma Rose Mitchell. Are you Tyler? Mrs. Henderson told me all about you yesterday. I'm so incredibly excited to finally meet someone else who signs." Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The fluid movements, the natural expression dancing across her face, the way her eyes lit up with each gesture. This 7-year-old girl signed like someone who had been immersed in deaf culture for years. There was an elegance to her movements that rivaled professional interpreters he'd hired for business meetings. Tyler's bright green eyes darted nervously between Emma and his father, uncertainty flickering across his delicate features. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clutching his backpack straps like a lifeline. Slowly, tentatively, he stepped into the classroom, his movements careful and measured. You really know sign language?" His hands asked hesitantly, the movements smaller and more cautious than usual. "Like, really know it? Not just the alphabet?" "Of course I do." Emma's face absolutely lit up with genuine joy, her smile so radiant it seemed to illuminate the entire classroom. "My little brother Jake is deaf too, just like you. He's 5 years old, and I've been talking to him in signs since he was born. I learned because I wanted to be the first person to tell him, 'I love you,' that he could actually understand." She patted the desk beside her enthusiastically. "Want to sit together? I saved you the best spot by the window. I thought you might like watching the birds outside. They're like little sign language dancers in the sky." For the first time in 3 long years, Marcus watched his son smile, not the polite practice smile he gave adults who tried too hard to connect with him, but a real, radiant smile that transformed his entire face and made him look like the carefree child he should have been all along. Tyler practically bounced to the desk beside Emma, his backpack tumbling forgotten to the floor in his excitement. Mrs. Henderson leaned close to Marcus, her voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything quite like it in 30 years of teaching. Emma just transferred here yesterday from Lincoln Elementary. Her mother said they needed a change of schools for personal reasons, but she wouldn't elaborate on why. The girl is remarkable. She's been helping our other students with basic signs during recess." Marcus nodded absently, his attention completely captivated by Tyler and Emma. They were already deep in animated conversation, their hands flying through the air like butterflies as Tyler excitedly showed Emma his prized collection of miniature cars, explaining the different models and years. Emma listened with rapt attention, then began telling him about her favorite books, acting out different characters and making Tyler laugh silently until his whole body shook with joy. "Daddy!" Tyler signed to Marcus, his face absolutely glowing with happiness. "Emma knows the entire story of the secret garden in sign language. She's going to teach me new words I've never learned before, and she says there are sign language songs that tell stories." As Marcus drove home that afternoon, Tyler chattered excitedly from the back seat. The first time he'd voluntarily shared detailed stories about school in months. Every gesture was animated, every expression full of life. "Emma has a brother named Jake who's deaf just like me. She learned sign language all by herself because of him. She said tomorrow she'll show me this amazing game they play with colors and shapes that helps Jake learn new words." That evening, Marcus found himself actually looking forward to the morning school run for the first time since Tyler had started at the academy. But as he tucked his son into bed, listening to more excited stories about Emma, a nagging question lingered in the back of his mind. What exactly was Emma's story? Why had such a young child mastered sign language so completely and beautifully? And why had her family suddenly needed to change schools? The next morning, Tyler practically sprinted into the classroom with more energy than Marcus had seen from him in years. Emma was already there, carefully arranging an intricate display of colorful cards, small toys, and picture books on their shared desk, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. "Good morning, Tyler," she signed brightly, her face beaming with excitement. "Are you ready for our color and emotion game? I invented it to help Jake learn how to tell me when he's feeling different things. It's super fun, I promise." Marcus lingered longer than usual in the doorway, completely fascinated by watching his son engage so naturally and joyfully with another child. Emma's enthusiasm was absolutely infectious. She had Tyler laughing silently within minutes, his shoulders shaking with delight as she acted out different emotions using exaggerated facial expressions and creative gestures. "Excuse me, are you by any chance Tyler's father?" A soft, hesitant voice behind him made Marcus turn around. A woman in her early 30s stood there, wearing a simple navy blue dress that had clearly seen better days. The fabric was faded, and there were small, carefully mended tears near the hem. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tired ponytail, and dark circles shadowed her bright blue eyes identical to Emma's. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, Emma's mother," she continued, extending a hand that bore the telltale signs of hard work: rough skin, short nails, small cuts across her knuckles. "Emma hasn't stopped talking about Tyler since yesterday afternoon. She signed his name at least 50 times during dinner last night. Thank you for letting them be friends, for letting her belong somewhere." Something in her tone struck Marcus as deeply odd, almost desperate. "Thank you? Why would you thank me for that? They're just children being children." Sarah's eyes flickered with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite identify. Was it fear, shame, relief? Not every parent is. Understanding about children like Jake, like Tyler. Emma's had to change schools twice before because other parents complained that she was disruptive when she would interpret for Jake during school events, or when she'd get upset defending him from teasing. She trailed off, glancing nervously at the luxury cars in the parking lot, then forced an unnaturally bright smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. "Anyway, I really should get to work. I have a morning shift today. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Thompson." She hurried away before Marcus could respond, leaving him standing there with far more questions than answers. There was something about Sarah Mitchell that didn't quite fit together, a bone-deep sadness that ran much deeper than typical single-parent exhaustion, and a skittishness that suggested she was running from something. That afternoon, Tyler bounded to the car with more energy and excitement than Marcus had seen in years. "Daddy, Emma taught me 15 completely new signs today, and she said this weekend she might be able to show me how to teach Jake some new games that help him when he gets scared or sad." "Jake is Emma's little brother, right?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes, he's 5 and he's deaf like me, but Emma says he's really, really smart, even smarter than some hearing kids. But she also said some kids at their old school were really mean to him, calling him names and making fun of the way he tries to talk out loud sometimes. That's why they had to move here." Tyler's hands moved rapidly, his excitement and indignation equally palpable. "Can we please have Emma over to play sometime? Please, Daddy. I promise I'll be good." Marcus hesitated, sensing undercurrents he didn't fully understand. Something about the Mitchell family situation felt complicated and potentially painful, but seeing Tyler's hopeful expression and remembering how happy he'd been, Marcus couldn't bring himself to refuse. "I'll talk to Emma's mother tomorrow." That evening, Marcus found himself researching Lincoln Elementary School online, diving deep into demographics and reviews. The public school Emma had transferred from was located in one of Boston's most struggling neighborhoods, underfunded, overcrowded, with extremely limited special education resources and no dedicated sign language support. Why would a devoted mother move her deaf child from a school system where Emma was desperately needed as Jake's interpreter to a wealthy private academy, where Emma was the only student who could communicate with Tyler? And how had a 7-year-old managed to become so fluent in ASL that she surpassed some of the professional interpreters Marcus had hired over the years? The pieces didn't quite fit together, but one thing was becoming crystal clear. Emma had given Tyler something absolutely precious and irreplaceable: genuine connection and friendship. Friday afternoon, Marcus mustered all his courage to approach Sarah Mitchell as she hurriedly picked up Emma from school. She looked even more exhausted than before, if that was possible, and he noticed her glancing nervously around the parking lot filled with gleaming luxury cars, her shoulders tense with obvious discomfort. "Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Marcus Thompson, Tyler's father. I was wondering if Emma might like to come over this weekend to play with Tyler. He's been asking about it all week." Sarah's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, worry, then something that looked almost like panic. Her hands twisted nervously around her purse strap. "That's incredibly kind of you to offer, but I don't think. We're quite busy this weekend. Emma has responsibilities at home." Emma, who had been signing animatedly with Tyler about a book they'd both read, caught the tail end of the conversation and tugged insistently on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can I please go play with Tyler? He has so many wonderful books, and he said his house has a big backyard where we could practice signs outside, and maybe Jake could come too." "Emma, sweetheart, we've talked about this before," Sarah said quietly. But Marcus caught the internal struggle evident in her voice, the way her resolve seemed to be cracking. "We can't just impose on people." Tyler looked between the adults, his intuitive nature picking up on the sudden tension in the air. His hands moved hesitantly. "Did I do something wrong? Did I say something that made Emma's mama not like me?" "No, buddy, absolutely not," Marcus assured him quickly, kneeling down to Tyler's eye level. "You haven't done anything wrong at all." He turned back to Sarah, noting the way she seemed to shrink into herself. "Perhaps we could meet at a park instead. Something more neutral. Or Emma and Jake could come for just an hour or two. Tyler's been happier this week than I've seen him in years." At the mention of Jake's name, Sarah's carefully maintained facade cracked visibly. He's not feeling well today. He gets sick sometimes when he doesn't." She stopped abruptly, but Emma's expression had shifted to deep concern. She signed something rapidly to Tyler that made the boy's eyes widen with understanding and worry. Tyler looked up at Marcus with an expression far too mature and knowing for an 8-year-old. "Daddy." Tyler signed privately to Marcus, making sure Sarah couldn't see. "Emma says Jake gets sick a lot because they don't have enough food sometimes. She shares her school lunch with him every day, but it's not always enough." Marcus felt his chest tighten painfully. The worn clothes, the bone-deep exhaustion, the reluctance to accept social invitations, the nervous glances at luxury cars. Suddenly, Sarah Mitchell's behavior made heartbreaking sense. "Mrs. Mitchell," Marcus said as gently as possible, "why don't we have both children over tomorrow? I could pick them up around noon, and we could order pizza and just let the kids play. Nothing fancy, just a casual play date between friends." Sarah's fierce pride warred visibly with her children's obvious needs, and Marcus could see the exact moment her maternal love won out over her stubborn independence. "If you're absolutely sure it wouldn't be too much trouble, Emma has been so happy this week." "No trouble at all," Marcus assured her warmly, already making mental notes about preparing extra food and finding ways to send leftovers home without damaging Sarah's dignity. The kids deserve to just be kids. Well, that evening, Tyler asked the question that had been weighing heavily on Marcus's mind all afternoon. "Daddy, why is Emma's family so sad? Why don't they have enough food? Don't all families have enough?" Marcus chose his words very carefully. "Sometimes good people go through really difficult times, buddy. What matters most is that Emma is your friend, and real friends help each other however they can." Tyler nodded with a solemnity that broke Marcus's heart, then signed with fierce determination, "Tomorrow I'm going to share everything I have with Emma and Jake, just like Emma shares everything with me every day." Saturday morning, Marcus drove through increasingly run-down neighborhoods to an address that made his heart sink with every passing block. The apartment complex was a study in urban decay, broken windows hastily covered with cardboard and duct tape, weeds growing through massive cracks in the pavement, graffiti covering most surfaces, and the overwhelming smell of mildew and despair. When Sarah answered the door after several knocks, Marcus had to force himself not to react visibly to the sparse, cold apartment behind her. The furniture was minimal and clearly second-hand. The walls were bare, except for children's drawings, taped up with loving care, and the kitchen consisted of a hot plate and a mini refrigerator that hummed loudly with mechanical strain. Emma appeared almost instantly, with a small boy clutching her hand protectively. Jake, with the same golden hair and bright blue eyes as his sister, but with a fragility that spoke of too many worries for such a young child. The 5-year-old hung back shyly behind Emma's legs, but when Tyler emerged from Marcus's car and began signing, "Hello, I'm Tyler, I'm so happy to meet you," Jake's entire face transformed with pure delight. The drive to Marcus's estate in the prestigious Beacon Hill neighborhood was quiet, but Marcus watched in his rearview mirror as the 3 children communicated in rapid, flowing sign language, building an instant bond that transcended their different circumstances. Emma was clearly translating everything for Jake, making sure he felt included in every conversation. Tyler's excitement at showing his new friends around his home was absolutely infectious. He led them through the spacious rooms with obvious pride, but Marcus noticed something beautiful and heartwarming happening. Tyler was instinctively adapting his tour for Jake's shorter attention span and obvious overwhelm, making sure the younger boy felt safe and included at every step. In the sprawling garden, Emma taught both boys an intricate game she'd clearly invented, combining sign language storytelling with an elaborate version of tag. Marcus found himself completely mesmerized, watching the 3 children play together. No spoken words needed, just pure connection, joy, and the kind of innocent happiness that seemed to light up the entire yard. "Emma!" Marcus signed during a snack break, genuinely curious. "Where did you learn to sign so beautifully?" "You're more fluent than some professional interpreters I know." Emma's expression grew serious and wise beyond her 7 years. "I had to learn really fast when Jake was little and scared all the time. Mama was working 2 jobs after Daddy left us, and Jake would cry for hours because nobody could understand what he needed or wanted. So I practiced every single night with library books and YouTube videos until I could be his voice and his ears in the world." The crushing weight of responsibility this tiny 7-year-old had carried hit Marcus like a physical blow to the chest. While Tyler had enjoyed teams of tutors, therapists, and specialists, Emma had taught herself an entire language out of pure love and desperate necessity. When Marcus served lunch, he made sure to pack extra sandwiches, fruit, and snacks for later, watching Emma's careful, practiced movements as she wrapped them in napkins, undoubtedly planning to stretch them into future meals for her and Jake. As the afternoon wound down, Jake fell asleep on the plush couch between Tyler and Emma, completely exhausted from more active play than he'd probably experienced in months. Emma gently stroked his hair while Tyler carefully covered him with a soft blanket, both older children instinctively protective of the sleeping boy. "Thank you," Emma signed to Marcus, her young face serious and grateful. "Jake hasn't smiled this much or slept this peacefully in a really long time. This has been like a dream day for us." That evening, after driving the Mitchell children home and watching them disappear into their bleak apartment building, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Emma and Jake's profoundly grateful faces. Tyler was already enthusiastically planning their next playdate, chattering about games they could teach Jake and books Emma might like to borrow from their extensive library. For the first time since Claire's tragic death, Marcus felt something fundamental shifting inside him, not just gratitude for Tyler's obvious happiness, but a growing sense that this unexpected friendship might be changing all of them in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. Monday morning brought a completely unexpected visitor to Marcus's corporate office. His assistant knocked nervously and announced that a Mrs. Sarah Mitchell was in the lobby asking to see him. No appointment, no warning, just a desperate determination that had somehow gotten her past building security. Sarah sat rigidly in the expensive leather chair across from his imposing mahogany desk, wearing the same faded navy dress she'd worn to pick up Emma every day that week. Her hands trembled visibly as she clutched a worn manila folder, and her eyes darted around the opulent office with obvious discomfort. "Mr. Thompson, I need to be completely honest with you about something important, about who we really are and why we actually moved schools. Emma and Jake deserve better than the lies I've been telling." Marcus leaned forward attentively, sensing the critical importance of this moment and the courage it had taken for Sarah to come here. Emma had to leave Lincoln Elementary because she was being systematically bullied. Not for being different herself, but for constantly defending Jake from cruel children and indifferent teachers. The kids would mock him for the sounds he makes when he tries to speak. They'd knock his hearing aids out of his ears, and Emma would get into physical fights protecting him. Sarah's voice cracked with pain and exhaustion. The school administration said she was becoming increasingly aggressive and disruptive, and strongly suggested that Jake might be better served at a special facility where he wouldn't be such a distraction to the other students. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, not at Sarah, but at a system that had so completely failed these vulnerable children. "There's more," Sarah continued, tears threatening to spill. "I've been working 3 different cleaning jobs at night to keep us afloat, but Jake's been having terrible nightmares about school, and Emma's been staying up to comfort him instead of sleeping. Her grades were slipping because she was exhausted, and I was terrified that I was failing them both as a mother." She opened the manila folder with shaking hands, revealing official documents. Child Services has been asking questions about Jake's frequent absences and Emma's defensive behavior. "I moved us here hoping for a fresh start, but I'm scared they'll follow up and decide I'm an unfit mother." Looking directly at Marcus, with fierce maternal protection burning in her eyes, she said, "I'm telling you all of this because Emma absolutely adores Tyler, and Jake talks about him constantly using signs Emma taught him. But if you're going to pull Tyler away from us when you learn we're poor and potentially under investigation, please do it now, before they get any more attached and get their hearts broken again." The raw, painful honesty of her words hit Marcus like a revelation. Here was a mother who had sacrificed absolutely everything for her children, asking for nothing but absolutely terrified of losing the one bright spot of happiness in their difficult lives. "Sarah," Marcus said gently, his voice filled with genuine respect, "Tyler has learned more about friendship, kindness, and what really matters in life in 1 week with Emma than in years of expensive tutoring and therapy. You're not failing your children. You're raising extraordinary, compassionate human beings against impossible odds." Sarah's carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely, and tears streamed down her face. "In fact," Marcus continued, a brilliant idea forming in his mind, "I have a serious proposition for you. My company is launching a new accessibility and inclusion initiative. We desperately need someone who truly understands sign language, special needs advocacy, and what families like ours actually need. Would you consider working for us as our Director of Accessibility Services?" Sarah stared at him in complete shock. "You're offering me a real job, with benefits?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to use your hard-won experience and Emma's expertise to help other families navigate challenges you've already conquered." Marcus smiled warmly. "And Emma and Jake would be welcome in our company's excellent daycare program, which happens to have the best special education support in the city." For the first time since he'd met her, Sarah Mitchell smiled, really truly smiled, and Marcus understood something profound. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in his office watching Sarah Mitchell command a boardroom full of executives with quiet confidence. Her transformation had been remarkable. Gone were the worn clothes and exhausted demeanor, replaced by professional attire and a newfound sense of purpose. But what struck him most was how she'd maintained her gentle authenticity while gaining the respect of his typically demanding corporate team. The key to our accessibility initiative isn't just compliance, Sarah was explaining to the marketing director, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. It's understanding that nearly 20% of our potential customers have some form of disability. When we make our products truly accessible, we're not just doing the right thing, we're expanding our market significantly. Tyler and Jake had become inseparable after school, spending their time in the company's exceptional childcare center, while Emma helped other children learn basic sign language. The sight of Tyler patiently teaching Jake to read had become a daily highlight for Marcus, watching his son develop confidence and leadership skills he'd never shown before. But not everyone in Marcus's world was embracing the changes. "Marcus, darling, we need to talk." Victoria Ashworth, one of Boston's most influential socialites and a major client, cornered him at a charity gala the following Saturday. Her perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her champagne glass as she surveyed the room. "People are talking about your new situation." "My situation?" Marcus kept his voice carefully neutral, though he could feel tension building in his shoulders. "This woman you've hired, her children mixing with Tyler, it's causing quite a stir in our circle." Victoria's voice carried that particular brand of upper-class disdain that Marcus had grown to despise. "The Pemberton Academy Board is concerned about the influence these children might have on the other students. After all, we maintain certain standards." Marcus felt his jaw clench. Emma and Jake are extraordinary children who have brought joy and friendship into Tyler's life. If that threatens anyone's standards, perhaps those standards need examining. Victoria's laugh was cold and calculating. "Oh, Marcus, you're being naive. That woman has clearly maneuvered herself into your company and your life quite strategically. A poor single mother with 2 children befriending the lonely billionaire widower. It's almost textbook." The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow, not because he believed it, but because he realized others might. That evening, as he watched Sarah helping Tyler and Jake with homework while Emma read aloud to all 3 of them, doubt began to creep into his mind for the first time. Sarah looked up from Jake's math worksheet and caught Marcus's troubled expression. "Everything all right? You seem worried about something." "Just work stress," Marcus lied. But he noticed how Sarah's face tightened slightly, as if she sensed the shift in his mood. Later that night, Tyler approached Marcus with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Daddy, some kids at school said mean things about Emma and Jake today. They said poor kids don't belong at our school, and that Emma is just pretending to be my friend because you're rich." Marcus felt his heart sink. "What did you tell them?" "I told them they were stupid and don't understand real friendship," Tyler signed fiercely. "But Daddy, Emma looked really sad when she heard them. She asked me if you think she's just pretending too." The innocent question cut straight to Marcus's core, forcing him to confront the ugly doubts Victoria had planted. Looking at his son's earnest face, he realized how toxic and destructive those thoughts were, and how they could destroy the most genuine relationship any of them had experienced in years. The crisis began with a phone call on Tuesday morning that changed everything. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant announced that Dr. Patricia Chen from Child Protective Services was on the line, requesting an immediate meeting about the Mitchell family. "Mr. Thompson, I'm calling because your name has come up in our investigation of Emma and Jake Mitchell's living situation. We've received reports suggesting that Ms. Mitchell may be exploiting her relationship with you for financial gain, potentially putting her children at risk. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. That's absolutely ridiculous. Sarah is an exemplary mother and a valued employee. Who made these accusations? I can't reveal our sources, but the reports suggest the children are being coached to form attachments to wealthy families. We need to conduct interviews with all parties involved, including Tyler, to ensure no manipulation is occurring. When Marcus shared the devastating news with Sarah, her reaction was everything he'd feared. The color drained from her face, and she sank into her office chair as if her legs could no longer support her. "I knew this would happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I should never have let myself believe we could be happy. Every time things get better, something tears it away." "Sarah, we'll fight this together," Marcus insisted, but he could see the defeat in her eyes. "No, Marcus, I won't let them drag you and Tyler into this mess. The best thing I can do for my children is remove them from this situation before it gets worse." Her voice grew stronger with maternal resolve. "I'm resigning, effective immediately. Emma and Jake won't be returning to the academy." The next morning, Tyler's reaction to Emma's absence was heartbreaking. He sat at their shared desk signing, "Where is Emma?" repeatedly until Mrs. Henderson gently explained that Emma wouldn't be coming back to school. That afternoon, Marcus found Tyler in his room, tears streaming down his face as he clutched a picture Emma had drawn for him. "Daddy, did I do something wrong? Did I make Emma's family go away like Mommy went away?" The comparison to Claire's death hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. "No, buddy. This isn't your fault, and it's not permanent like what happened to Mommy. Sometimes adults make things complicated when they should be simple. Can we go see Emma and Jake? Please? I need to tell them they're still my best friends." When Marcus and Tyler arrived at the Mitchells' apartment building, they found Sarah frantically packing boxes with the desperate efficiency of someone who'd had to flee before. Emma sat in the corner with Jake, both children crying silently as they watched their world collapse again. "Sarah, please don't do this," Marcus pleaded. "We can fight these accusations together. I have the best lawyers in Boston." "And what happens when the investigation drags on for months?" Sarah's voice was fierce with protective desperation. "What happens when the media gets involved and Tyler's life is disrupted? What happens when your business relationships suffer because you're associated with a family under CPS investigation?" Emma looked up at Tyler with tear-filled eyes and signed, "I'm sorry we caused trouble for you and your daddy. You're the best friend I ever had." Tyler's response broke everyone's heart. "You didn't cause trouble. You brought happiness. Please don't leave me alone again." As they drove home in crushing silence, Marcus realized that Victoria Ashworth's warning had been more than cruel gossip. It had been a threat. And now, the three people who had brought light back into their lives were being driven away by the very society he'd spent years building his reputation within. That night, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. If his wealth and status couldn't protect the people he'd come to love like family, then perhaps it was time to discover what truly mattered. By Thursday morning, Marcus had assembled a team of Boston's most aggressive family law attorneys, but the damage was already spreading like wildfire through the city's social networks. The story had somehow leaked to the press. Billionaire's son's friendship under investigation, child services questions poor families' motives. The headlines were brutal and reductive, painting Sarah as a calculating opportunist, and Marcus as a naive widower being manipulated. Photographers camped outside Tyler's school, the Mitchells' apartment building, and Marcus's office, turning their private crisis into a public spectacle. Victoria Ashworth's influence became crystal clear when three major clients suddenly cancelled their contracts, citing concerns about Thompson Industries' judgment and corporate leadership. Board members who had praised Marcus for years were now questioning his decision-making abilities. "The optics are terrible, Marcus," his longtime business partner Robert Sullivan explained during an emergency meeting. "The company's stock price has dropped 12% in 2 days. Our investors are nervous about leadership that appears emotionally compromised." Emotionally compromised? Marcus's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Because I hired a qualified woman and allowed my son to have friends. Because you blurred the lines between personal and professional relationships in a way that's now damaging the company," Robert replied bluntly. "The board is suggesting you take a temporary leave of absence until this resolves." Meanwhile, Tyler had stopped eating and barely spoke, even in sign language. He sat by his bedroom window each afternoon, clearly hoping to see Emma and Jake arriving for their usual playdate. His teacher reported that he'd withdrawn completely from classroom activities and was showing signs of depression. The final blow came Friday afternoon, when Marcus's lawyers delivered devastating news. CPS had recommended that Emma and Jake be temporarily placed in foster care while the investigation continued, citing concerns about Sarah's pattern of instability and potential emotional manipulation of the children. "They're using Emma's fluency in sign language against her," the lead attorney explained grimly. "The caseworker believes no 7-year-old could master ASL so completely without being coached, suggesting the children have been trained to manipulate deaf adults for financial gain." Marcus felt something inside him snap. The accusation was so absurd, so fundamentally misunderstanding of who Emma was, that he couldn't remain silent any longer. That evening, he found Tyler sitting on his bed, holding the communication device he'd used before meeting Emma. "Daddy," Tyler signed slowly, "I want to go back to being alone. Being friends hurts too much when they leave." The profound sadness in his son's expression finally crystallized Marcus's resolve. He'd spent 3 years trying to protect Tyler from the world's cruelty, but he'd failed to protect him from the cruelty of Marcus's own social circle. "Tyler, what if I told you we could fight for Emma and Jake? What if we could make sure they never have to be afraid again?" Tyler's eyes flickered with cautious hope. "How?" "By being brave enough to tell everyone the truth about what really matters," Marcus signed, his movements firm with newfound determination. "Even if it means some people won't like us anymore. Will we still be a family? Me, you, Emma, and Jake?" Marcus pulled his son close, making a silent promise. "We'll be whatever kind of family we choose to be, buddy. And no one, not the government, not society, not anyone, gets to decide that for us." That night, Marcus began planning something that would either save the Mitchell family or destroy his carefully constructed life. But looking at Tyler's picture of the 4 of them together, he realized he'd finally learned what Claire had always tried to teach him. Some things are worth risking everything for. Saturday morning brought an unexpected ally to Marcus's door. Mrs. Henderson, Tyler's teacher, holding a thick manila folder and wearing an expression of righteous indignation that he'd never seen from the usually gentle woman. "Mr. Thompson, I need to show you something that changes everything about this investigation. I've been Emma's teacher for only a few weeks, but I've taught for 30 years, and I know exceptional when I see it." She opened the folder to reveal Emma's complete academic records from Lincoln Elementary, including detailed reports from school psychologists and language specialists. "Look at these test scores, Marcus. Emma didn't just learn sign language. She tested at a college level in linguistic comprehension. She created her own teaching methods for Jake. These aren't the records of a coached child. They're the records of a gifted child who developed extraordinary abilities out of necessity and love." Marcus studied the documents with growing amazement. Emma's IQ scores placed her in the top 1% of her age group. Her language development assessments showed mastery not just of ASL, but of linguistic patterns that indicated she'd essentially developed her own communication system with Jake. "There's more," Mrs. Henderson continued. "I contacted Emma's previous teachers. The aggression issues. Emma was protecting Jake from systematic bullying that the school ignored. The instability. Sarah moved them 3 times trying to find a school that would support Jake's needs. Every teacher I spoke with described Emma as the most compassionate, intelligent child they'd ever encountered." She pulled out a final document that made Marcus's blood run cold. And this is the real reason CPS was called. Victoria Ashworth sits on the board of Lincoln Elementary's Parent Association. She made the initial complaint after Tyler's friendship with Emma became public knowledge. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Victoria hadn't just been expressing casual prejudice. She'd orchestrated a deliberate attack on the Mitchell family to force them out of Marcus's life. "Why are you showing me this?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because that little girl saved your son, Marcus. Tyler was drowning in loneliness, and Emma threw him a lifeline. Now she needs someone to throw her one." Mrs. Henderson's voice carried decades of classroom authority. "I've already prepared testimony for the hearing, but you need to know, if you don't fight for this family, you'll be making the biggest mistake of your life." That afternoon, Marcus called an emergency press conference that would either vindicate the Mitchell family or destroy his business empire. Standing before a room full of skeptical reporters, he took the biggest risk of his life. "I'm here to address the malicious rumors about the Mitchell family and to expose the real story behind this investigation. Emma Mitchell isn't a coached child exploiting my son. She's a gifted 7-year-old who taught herself sign language to care for her deaf brother. She didn't seek out Tyler for financial gain. She befriended him because she recognized his loneliness and wanted to help." He pulled out enlarged copies of Emma's test scores and teacher evaluations. "These are the records of a child prodigy whose only crime was being born into poverty. The allegations against her mother aren't based on evidence. They're based on prejudice and a deliberate campaign by people who believe friendship should be limited by economic status." The room erupted with questions, but Marcus continued with unwavering conviction. "Sarah Mitchell is the best employee I've ever hired and one of the strongest mothers I've ever met. Her children have brought more joy and purpose to my life than years of business success. If standing by this family costs me everything I've built, then so be it. Some things matter more than money." The D. As camera flashes illuminated his determined face, Marcus realized he'd finally found the courage to be the father Tyler deserved and the man Claire had always believed he could become. The headlines the next morning would either read, "Billionaire's brave stand for justice," or "Marcus Thompson's financial empire crumbles." Either way, he'd chosen love over fear, and that made all the difference. The press conference created a media firestorm that divided Boston's elite and captured national attention. By Monday morning, Marcus's phone was ringing constantly with calls from supporters and detractors, while social media buzzed with passionate debates about class, friendship, and family. The immediate consequences were severe. 3 more major clients terminated their contracts. The company's board called an emergency meeting to discuss Marcus's leadership, and several prominent families withdrew their children from Tyler's school to avoid the controversy. But something unexpected was also happening. Hundreds of families with disabled children were reaching out to support the Mitchells, sharing their own stories of discrimination and exclusion. Dr. Patricia Chen arrived at Marcus's office Tuesday morning with a very different demeanor than she'd shown during their phone call. She placed a thick file on his desk with evident frustration. "Mr. Thompson, I owe you and the Mitchell family an apology. Our investigation has uncovered that the initial complaints were filed by someone with clear personal motivations against your family. More importantly, our interviews with Emma and Jake have revealed exactly what you claimed: a remarkable child caring for her brother with extraordinary maturity and skill. She opened the file to show detailed psychological evaluations. Emma tested off the charts for emotional intelligence and linguistic ability. When we asked her to demonstrate how she taught Jake various concepts, she created an entire lesson plan on the spot that impressed our child development specialists. This isn't manipulation, it's genius-level empathy and intelligence. "What about the foster care recommendation?" Marcus asked, hardly daring to hope. "Withdrawn completely. In fact, we're recommending Sarah for our Excellence in Parenting recognition program. Her children are among the most well-adjusted and emotionally healthy we've evaluated." Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. "However, the damage may already be done. Sarah has stopped returning our calls, and neighbors report the family hasn't been seen since Saturday." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "What do you mean they haven't been seen?" "I'm afraid they may have left the city entirely. When families feel cornered by the system, sometimes they run rather than continue fighting." That afternoon, Marcus and Tyler drove to the Mitchells' apartment building, only to find it empty, except for a few pieces of furniture too worn to move. The landlord confirmed their worst fears. Sarah had paid her remaining rent and left without a forwarding address. Tyler sat in the empty apartment where he'd played with Emma and Jake just weeks before, his small hands signing desperately into the silence. "Emma! Jake! Where are you? I need my friends back." The sight of his son's anguish galvanized Marcus into action. "Tyler, we're going to find them. However long it takes, wherever they went, we're going to bring our family back together." "Promise?" Tyler's hands asked with 8-year-old vulnerability. "I promise," Marcus signed back. And for the first time since Claire's death, he made a vow he was absolutely determined to keep, no matter the cost. Wednesday morning brought a breakthrough when Mrs. Henderson called with crucial information. "Marcus, I think I know where they went. Emma once mentioned that her grandmother lived in a small town in Vermont called Millfield. She said it was the only place that ever felt like home." Within an hour, Marcus and Tyler were driving north, through Vermont's autumn landscape, following the only lead they had. As they passed small towns and rolling hills, Tyler pressed his face to the window, signing Emma and Jake at every playground and school they passed. "What if they don't want to see us?" Tyler asked, during a gas station stop, his young face etched with worry. "What if they think we caused too much trouble?" Marcus knelt down to Tyler's level, choosing his words carefully. "Real friendship means standing by each other during the hardest times, not just the easy ones. Emma and Jake need to know they're not alone, that they have people who will fight for them no matter what." As they drove toward Millfield and an uncertain reunion, Marcus realized this journey wasn't just about finding the Mitchell family. It was about discovering what it truly meant to choose love over fear, connection over comfort, and family over everything else the world said should matter more. The small town of Millfield, Vermont, appeared around a bend in the mountain road like something from a postcard. White church steeples, maple trees ablaze with autumn colors, and the kind of peaceful atmosphere that felt worlds away from Boston's urban chaos. Marcus and Tyler had been driving for 3 hours, following GPS directions to an address Mrs. Henderson had found in Emma's emergency contact forms. As they pulled up to a modest farmhouse with a wraparound porch, Tyler suddenly gripped Marcus's arm with excitement. "Daddy, look!" He pointed to the yard where 2 small figures were raking leaves under the supervision of an elderly woman with silver hair. Emma looked up at the sound of their car, her eyes widening in disbelief. For a moment she stood frozen, then dropped her rake and ran toward them with Jake close behind. Tyler bolted from the car and met them halfway in the yard, all three children colliding in a tangle of arms and silent tears of joy. "Tyler, how did you find us?" Emma's hands flew through the air with excitement and relief. "I thought we'd never see you again. I thought you forgot about us." "We could never forget you," Tyler signed back fiercely. "You're my family. Daddy and I came to bring you home." Sarah emerged from the house, her face cycling through shock, joy, and then deep concern. "Marcus, what are you doing here? You shouldn't have come." "The investigation, your business, Tyler's safety—" "Sarah, stop," Marcus interrupted gently, approaching her with Tyler still wrapped around Emma and Jake. "The investigation is over. CPS cleared you completely. More than that, they exposed who was really behind the accusations." Dee, the elderly woman, clearly Emma's grandmother, stepped forward with the kind of maternal authority that commanded respect. "Young man, I'm Dorothy Mitchell. These children have been through enough trauma for several lifetimes. If you're here to cause more disappointment—" "Grandma Dot, this is Tyler's daddy," Emma interrupted, signing as she spoke so Jake could follow the conversation. "He's the one who gave Mama a job and let us be friends with Tyler. He's good, I promise." Marcus knelt down so he was at eye level with all three children. "Emma, Jake, I need to tell you something important. The people who tried to separate us were wrong about everything. They said Emma was pretending to be Tyler's friend for money, but I know the truth. Emma befriended Tyler because she has the biggest heart in the world. They said you were coached to manipulate people, but I've seen the real Emma, the girl who taught herself an entire language to care for her brother." He turned to Sarah, his voice carrying months of suppressed emotion. "They said you were using the children to take advantage of me, but the truth is, you and your children saved Tyler from a lifetime of loneliness. You saved me from becoming someone I didn't recognize." Sarah's grandmother listened intently as Marcus continued. "Sarah, I've learned something these past few weeks. My money and status couldn't protect the people I love from prejudice and cruelty, but standing up for what's right, fighting for the people who matter, that's something worthwhile." "What about your company, your reputation?" Sarah asked, tears threatening. "The company will rebuild, stronger than before. We've already received contracts from dozens of businesses that believe in inclusion over exclusion. As for my reputation," Marcus smiled, "I'd rather be known as the man who fought for Emma and Jake Mitchell than the billionaire who stayed silent." Tyler suddenly stepped forward with an announcement that surprised everyone. "I want to tell you all something important. Daddy and I talked in the car, and we decided we want to ask Emma, Jake, and Miss Sarah to be our family for real. Not just friends, but actual family." Emma's eyes went wide. "What does that mean exactly?" Marcus felt his heart pounding as he prepared to voice the decision that had crystallized during their drive. "It means I'm asking your mother if she'd consider marrying me. Not because of convenience or gratitude, but because I've fallen in love with the woman who taught me what courage looks like. It means asking if you and Jake would like to be Tyler's sister and brother officially." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sarah's grandmother watched her granddaughter's face carefully, then spoke with the wisdom of 8 decades. "Sarah, honey, I've seen you care for those children alone for years, carrying burdens no single person should bear. I've watched you sacrifice everything for their happiness. Maybe it's time you let someone sacrifice something for yours." Sarah looked at Marcus with wonder and lingering disbelief. "You're serious? You want us to be a real family?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Marcus replied, taking her hands. "Claire once told me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to love someone every day, even when it's difficult. Tyler chose Emma and Jake as his siblings the first day they met. I'm just catching up." Emma suddenly threw her arms around Marcus's waist. Does this mean Tyler can be my brother forever, and we can all live together and Jake won't be scared anymore? If your mother says yes, then yes to all of that, Marcus confirmed, looking at Sarah with hopeful eyes. Sarah's answer came not in words, but in the way she finally allowed herself to lean into Marcus's embrace, 3 years of fierce independence melting into the relief of shared love and responsibility. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his backyard, watching his new family play together on a crisp spring morning. Emma was teaching Jake and Tyler a complex game that involved storytelling through sign language, all 3 children laughing silently as they created elaborate adventures with their hands. Sarah approached with coffee and slipped her arm around his waist. "Any regrets about the billionaire bachelor lifestyle?" Marcus watched Tyler help Jake climb onto a tree swing while Emma spotted them both protectively, only that it took me so long to realize what I was missing. The company's new accessibility initiative had become a national model, with Sarah leading seminars across the country about inclusive design and communication. Emma and Jake thrived in their new school, where Emma's linguistic gifts were celebrated rather than suspected. And Tyler had become the confident, joyful child Claire had always known he could be. That evening, as Marcus tucked all 3 children into bed, Tyler made an observation that captured everything perfectly. "Daddy, remember when I used to be sad because nobody could talk to me? Now I have a sister who taught me that the best conversations happen with your heart, not just your hands." Sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the simplest acts of kindness. A 7-year-old girl choosing to befriend a lonely boy, a mother refusing to give up on her children's dreams, and a father learning that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the love that fills your home with laughter and hope. As Marcus looked around at his extraordinary family, he finally understood what Claire had tried to teach him all along. Love multiplies when you share it, hope grows when you nurture it, and family is found wherever hearts choose to connect across any divide.